Hi, welcome to another Excel demo with Rich Kerr. In this example, we're going to take a look at the grouping feature within an Excel pivot table. If you take a look at the current example I have here, I've got locations down the left-hand side as my row labels. I've got sales reps across the top, and I've got a field labeled amount as the data being aggregated in the body of the pivot table. For this example, let's say we wanted to be able to look at our data on a regional basis. So maybe I want to see Beijing and Tokyo and Hong Kong grouped together as a region called Asia, and the U.S. cities referred to as USA and the European cities referred to as Europe. Further, we're going to suppose for this example that I do not have such a field in my source data. If I go back to my source data, there's no column called region that I can use for this purpose. And let's say I don't want to create such a column in the source data. I just want to do it on the fly within the context of the pivot table itself. Here's how it's done. I'll select the cell with Beijing, and I'm going to hold my control key so that I may skip Chicago and select Hong Kong. I'm still holding the control key, and I'll go down and select Tokyo. These are three locations that I wish to group together. Now that I have them selected, I'll right-click on the selected options or the selected values, and I'll choose Group. Those three values move together under a heading now called Group 1. I'll simply type over the label Group 1 with the word Asia and hit my Enter key. Now the other locations have been placed into groups that are groups unto themselves. So Chicago is in a Chicago group, Houston's in a Houston group, and so on. So we need to address that. I'll click on the value for the Chicago row label, not the artificial group heading for Chicago that got created when we added this regional field. But we'll select Chicago there. I'll hold my control key and select Houston, Miami, and New York. I'll then right-click and choose Group. Those cities move under a heading labeled Group 2, which I will change to USA. And finally, I'll select the London row label, Milan. Didn't intend for that. Again, we'll select London. Again, holding the control key, Milan, Paris, and Rome. And again, I'll right-click and choose Group. Group 3 will be called Europe. So now I have these regions that have been created. And you'll notice over in the pivot table field list, my new field was called Location 2 by the pivot table tool. So this new calculated field based on a field called Location is initially called Location 2, and I think I'd like to change that. So I'm going to right-click on one of my region values. It could be Europe, could be USA, it doesn't matter. I'll right-click and go to Field Settings. And here I can change the custom name to region. So now in my pivot table field list, region is the name of that new calculated field, which corresponds to the various cities I had selected. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this is I can continue to use the regions even if I no longer have the individual cities listed. So if I come over to my pivot table field list and I uncheck location, we'll see that the regions continue to function. So I can use those independently of the underlying data. The pivot table still keeps track of which locations belong to which region. If I go to the Analyze tab and go to Insert Slicer, I can even use a slicer for my new regional field. So I can turn on the slicer tool and use that as a way to filter my data. So this is how you can use the grouping tool inside a pivot table to aggregate data, even with groupings that don't exist inside the source data from which the pivot table is built. I hope you find this useful. Please check the channel frequently for more videos on Excel from Rich Kerr. Have a productive day. Peace.